It's the Getae Abridged campaign part 13. Last time we were dealing with a Swabia invasion. We took out their king in a nice field battle, and then we did a fort defense that finished off the rest of their invading army. We then started to counterattack, but were distracted by playing some politics, getting one of our leaders killed, and generally not achieving anything as far as I recall, but no disasters either. Now we're getting back on track. Our main army has already advanced into Swabia's territory, and now we'll besiege Lupfordham right here. The garrison inside is fairly big and the balance bar looks nasty, so I left that siege, and then during the end turn sequence they did sally, and we get a better balance bar and a field battle. Although, as seems to often be the case, this is a balance bar that then reverses once again once we come down here into the battlefield and the enemy now have the advantage, but we have a much better position than them. Plus, as the battle starts, we've already got them outflanked with our cav. They are using some tactical townfolk here to absorb some of my slinger attacks. That's good stuff, and I wonder if the AI is doing that in any way deliberately. It seems to happen quite a lot. Anyway, the enemy move up our hill and gradually advance into battle, while my cav hit on both flanks because the enemy seem to have most of their skirmishing units on the flanks. So we attack them, but with these Germanic armies, everything's a skirmishing unit, so we have to run away due to a storm of jabs coming at us. These archers at the front are going to get slung to death, gradually anyway. And on our front line, well, we're just tanking the enemy arrows and waiting for the enemy's infantry to come in, and then we'll have our guys in their quote-unquote phalanx, our sword and pike phalanx, where they've got their weapons probably the wrong way round to make that the most effective thing. But once the enemy is stuck, it's time for us to maneuver. Their general was out on his own for some reason, so I charged down the hill with my general, hoped I'd just steamroll them, but it's not quite as effective as in Three Kingdoms Total War, where a cav charge just takes out an axe unit immediately. That axe unit will hold on. Still, we've killed a lot of the general, and on the other flank we've got a nice thing going, because I can put some jabs up on this little extra hill beside the hill, and they can easily throw over the top of everything and just pepper the enemy with jabs. That'll probably rout a unit at least. You can also see I'm setting up for some rear attacks at the back. Really, we just need to get on and win this battle. First, I cycle charge the enemy general to hit him again, send some guys flying in the process, and that does take the general's unit out. Then the scouts dodge around all of the enemy's rearguard units that were back there and come up for a very slow charge. Since we're charging uphill, we probably don't get many kills with that, and it's not a very heavy cav unit. But of course the morale shock is all that matters. So we shock the entire line, then turn around and mostly just sling and shoot arrows at the other units that hadn't engaged. And after a while we persuaded them to leave, and that ends the battle for us in a heroic victory. That's the garrison of the town pretty much dead, so this place will be ours. We can make the follow-up auto resolve extra easy, in fact, by bringing over the second army. Now, I really wanted to loot this place, just look at all that cash. However, I am actually planning to make this province one of the Getae core provinces. We're going to deify them, so we'll occupy it and generally be nice to them. And that's going to be the end of the cooperation of these two armies, because now the Swabias are to our north and to our south, so we'll need to split up to deal with both. To the south, the Boii were there doing something, but it seems their army's been defeated, so potential action there. In the north, we don't have any intel, so let's get some. This place, Rue Jean, is part of Swabia, the province we're trying to take, so we want to come occupy this town. Looks like right now it's mainly defended by ships, and that's a good thing since generally ship units are weaker than land units on land, as you might expect, so we're going to go for that. Down in our little BDSM rebel farm, I noticed that the Swabias are actually conquering the Brookie to our west, so having our army here might finally pay off. I wasn't hugely enthusiastic about actually saving the Brookie here, because they have been annoying me recently. We'd be way richer if it weren't for the Brookie, and they won't ally with me for some reason. But that said, I still walked up to the edge of their territory, just so that we can monitor the situation and potentially strike just after a battle here to take the territory from the Swabias. We'll see what happens with all that. Now, moving on, some good quote-unquote news. We've got a new opponent. These guys, the Heracos Confederation, or Heruskos, come in to war. They're from the west, so they're to the west of Lupfordham that we just took. That's why, presumably, they're declaring war on us. We now border them, meaning we're now at war with pretty much all of Germania that we know about, and that's probably not going to help. Now back to Lupfordham. It looks like a Swabia's army has appeared in that town just to the south, so now we need to be on guard. We want to ideally go and attack this place, but with the full garrison and the full stack, that's going to be difficult. Looks like the Swabia are also recruiting a new army at Rue Jean, so we want to go full steam ahead. We are going to be attacking in autumn, so next turn we'll basically just be stuck standing in their territory, meaning the enemy will have crucial time to recruit more troops. But still, we need to try and do this, and we'll still have an advantage, in theory at least, or not in theory. We'll have a massive balance bar disadvantage, but in an actual battle we'll be okay because there are so many ships there. As for the situation to the south, at first I was going to try and ambush their army, hope they come and attack Lupfordham and hit them on the road. But the thing is, this army isn't very suited to doing an ambush, and I started thinking, well, it might actually be better to just make a fort on the road, because that aggroes the AI a lot more, because they don't like it when you stand in their territory. And a fort does give you, potentially, a bigger advantage than ambushing, because it makes the enemy blob up, so it's easier to do rear attacks. And, of course, you don't need as many melee troops to hold the line, and we don't have many melee troops in that army, so that's perfect. Let's move on and see what happens. The Brookie are once again preventing me getting rich at a kink, and then hello, another opponent jumps in. It's the Cimbri who have decided to get in on this war. Their territory is on the other side of Rue Jean, which we're currently going for, so that means once we take Rue Jean we will immediately be in trouble. We're also in trouble right now. The Hereskars have sent an army from the west towards Lupfordham. It seems to have stopped because there is a river there. It probably cost them a turn to actually move on to attack the town. So we've got some time to walk back, and we can just about do it even though it's winter. That means my plan to attack to the south is officially out the window. We're going to try and defend here as much as we can, and hopefully the two enemy armies won't attack at the same time. This is the next turn. Basically nothing happened during the end turn sequence. And down with the Brookie situation, I decided to stop staking out their territory because the Swabia actually ended their siege but still just stood there outside the enemy town, so the AI is just doing something stupid over there. I'm going to abandon that because it's now more profitable for me to just raid my own territory and see what happens with that. We can see the Swabia army to our south, the south of Lupfordham, spent its turn killing the survivors of the Bowie Confederation. So no attack there, and also the Confederate troops from the west just kind of stood there and did nothing. I thought maybe we could just attack them here by gathering up everything in the area, but this isn't really an ideal battle. It's either going to be a river crossing or a fort battle, both of which will make it hard for us to do any fancy maneuvers. And our army is weaker to start with, so that's a bad sign. So I thought we might as well not do that fight. We'll wait for the enemy to come to our side or do something, even just unfortify might help. I did try this ambush plan where I put all of my troops hidden next to the city to try and bait the enemy into crossing the river, but nothing came of that eventually, so not going to bother talking about that. Let's move on to some actual action, because my troops have arrived at Rue Jean. The army that was there isn't there anymore, so actually this isn't as bad as I feared it might be. We're just fighting the garrison, which isn't that large, and a whole load of ships who don't contribute very much. The balance bar is pretty good, we could potentially auto-resolve that, but we do have to fight more battles right after this, and Divide et Impera's auto-resolves are very mean, so we're doing this manually. The main thing we'll want to do is contest the landing of all of those enemy ships. You can see my army is split up to do that. I've put most of my best troops here at the western beach, but unfortunately the enemy fleet decided to go for the eastern beach instead, so we have gambled and lost. But I did not put all of my eggs in that one basket. We've got some inferior troops waiting over here, so we can still contest things. But actually this didn't go quite to plan. I was going to try and hit them as they went towards the town's eastern gate. But actually there is a sort of mini northern gate they can run to across that dock. For whatever reason I assume that dock was impassable. So now most of the enemy naval units will actually escape my little contested landing trap. I tried to hit some of them here with our lancers, but they got their charge cancelled for whatever reason, so we hit their skirmishers but didn't kill any of them, and now we're stuck here surrounded by skirmishers and other units that throw javelins also. We start losing a load of lancers, and I get out of there just before my unit actually starts to rout. We do manage to keep the unit alive, but that was a bit nasty. A few enemy naval units did join the fight over near the beach though, so we can come back and take those guys out. They'll be very vulnerable to the old surround and pound, so we can kill them easily enough. The Lancers did get a little bit of revenge, because as the enemy units ran away again and started going into the town, one unit at the back was vulnerable and we just about killed them. Those Lancers aren't very good in melee, because they're sort of a horse arch unit as well, so without their charge they don't do all that well, but still well enough to take out some skirmishers. Plus, the enemy's melee infantry from the fleet aren't that good. They're a light melee infantry unit. I'm guessing they have low stats to compensate for being a naval unit. So we just killed them easily enough. And interestingly, the ones that did escape and make it into the town just said hello to the garrison and then came back out of the eastern gate of the town to attack us, leaving the garrison behind. So in the end, we did get to fight all of the enemy's naval units separate to the garrison, which is what I wanted, just not quite in the way I was going for. We are going to have some issues with the enemy's many javs, and my main solution here is to just tank them. We're just going to let all of our Germanic levies die because they're extra expendable. We'll put them at the front and charge into the javs, and the javs will run out of javs before we run out of guys to get hit by javs. That allows us to win. Now this is advanced strategy. I do also attempt some real strategies. We throw in some of the cab and things for flank attacks there, but we don't really need it. We're just fighting javs and melee by the end of all that, so that's fine. Now though, we need to go to phase 2 of the battle where we kill the garrison. We've already started something on the other side of town, trying to advance my phalanx into the enemy's garrison units. You can see some of my guys here considering whether to use the pike instead of the sword at the front of the phalanx. They're beginning to learn. But it's not really the phalanx that does the killing here. We've got a load of archers. It's kind of hard to tell with the night battle mode on, but we are just wiping enemies out with our longbow hunters pretty easily. So we kill the units that are behind the front line. Then, since the front line wasn't dying because our phalanx was killing them so slow, well, we'll shoot them with arrows as well, and we can just about get the arc here to take those guys out. Soon we start advancing towards the capture point. There's also a little sideshow because the admiral of the enemy navy for some reason didn't land with everyone else, and he did land later on. So everything waiting at the eastern beach then absolutely dogpiles that guy and kills him. Meanwhile, the phalanx just grinds its way through the town, pretty much just cutting to the end of that process because it took a while. The enemy's garrison had no chance, both against the phalanx and the rain of longbow arrows hitting them from multiple sides. Plus we did start attacking from multiple sides with melee units as well by using the roads to bypass some of the enemy's defensive positions. Here's the eventual result. We absolutely smashed them. Our losses were not very great, and many of those losses were among levies as well. Now I'm so tempted to loot the place. As you can see, it's just so much money. But the thing is, when you loot it, you then have to just spend that money repairing the damage you did by looting it. And I'm not sure you actually make a profit, and you certainly disrupt public order quite a lot as well. And it probably reduces the population as well, can't quite remember. So now we have all of Swabia, except for the part controlled by our allies. And that's annoying because our allies might build temples like these ones right here, things that spread Germanic culture, which will make it harder for us to control this province. It also prevents us from using edicts, which isn't a huge deal, but still annoying, and one of the many reasons to not like the province system in general. As we move on to the next turn, we get some interesting action. The Bruci are currently attacking some more farmed rebels near a kink, and you can see the Bruci are almost dead from their constant auto-resolves in this region, and probably lack of food and things as well. So we decline to help them in that fight, and interestingly the Bruci do manage to lose. At last the rebels have survived. Also happening in that turn, if you were looking very closely, we got invaded by the Cimbri a little bit, and as we see there, the Heraskos do cross that river near Lupfordum and start besieging the town. No attack right away, and my nearby forces don't ambush them as per my original cancelled plan. Now the rebels near a kink come in to attack the town. There are barely any rebels alive, but our garrison is just dead enough that we can successfully lose this battle with the right auto-resolve. And there we have it, the last 4 guys in the rebel army take over, and that creates a new faction for us to attack. Then one of these annoying adoption things happened. This was the first time this happened in this campaign, and it reminded me that this happens all the time, and it just drains your money for various unknown reasons. Pretty annoying. I did want to check out who was being adopted there. I think it might actually have been the Queen. Not sure why other families are allowed to adopt such important members of our families just like that, and I have to bribe them not to. Pretty annoying, bad game design if you look into it technically, but let's leave that aside. We've got business to attend to, and that business is farming cash. The Bruci, by the way, in the west there have actually taken out the Swabos who were threatening to take that territory. So I guess the threat's over, meaning it's even more useful for us to just do this with our army. We sack and loot a kink, making something like 12 grand in the process, and getting some battle victories as well. Now I'm not sure whether we spent more than 12 grand on that army, just having it wait there for that to happen. Is that actually profitable? I'm sure it would be profitable in a time of peace where you can just have one army and constantly do that. But the opportunity cost of not using our army to play the game while we're waiting around and trying to farm those rebels could be greater than the amount of money we ultimately make off it. I'm not quite sure. The analysis needs to be done. I'm not convinced that that exploit really is an exploit at all. It might actually be a waste of time. You can see there was a rebellion up in Swabia, and I could have fought them there, but I couldn't be bothered because that battle was too boring, so I just let them keep rebelling for a bit. We're going to go towards some more interesting action where we do have 3 armies raiding us in Rue Jean, no doubt the cause of the rebellion. We have to focus on the Cimbri one to start with, because it's the only one in movement range of Rue Jean itself. And actually we can put a fort in this little choke point between 2 forests, so they're quite likely to just run right into us there. And the other 2 armies aren't much of a threat. One's too small to do anything, and the other one is on the other side of a river, so we'll have some time before they get up to no good. But we do need to deal with this Heraskos Confederation army at Lupfordum. I attack with my nearby not hidden army, and interestingly I don't get the garrison to help me in this fight. I figured the garrison would sally out as well. But no, so it's just a straight up field battle where the enemy apparently have a fairly large advantage, but we are going to have to do something about this army, so let's just ignore the balance bar and plough on anyway. We had a really good deployment position in this battle, a nice hill where our slingers can be behind the pike phalanx, just like at the start of this episode actually, but the issue we have is we're the attacker, so the enemy aren't necessarily going to attack our hill. Thus, we have to be annoying, and that's why the horse archers are way out in front attacking the enemy flank on their own. The plan is to just trigger whatever it is about the AI scripts that sometimes makes them forget they're the defender. If you hit them with a lot of ranged attacks, there's some sort of fail-safe where they'll just attack you because it figures out that the player is going to keep hitting them with ranged attacks for the rest of the battle. Anyway, while I'm back here, I mainly focused on shooting arrows at the enemy general. Couldn't get too close, as you can see, because he throws jabs back, which is much more deadly against our light horse archers. But we picked up a few kills in this fashion, not all that many though, since he is an armoured unit and these horse archers aren't all that good. Plus we eventually met our demise actually trying to do this, because the enemy just brought over some regular spear units, and they could throw jabs like everything these days, and one volley is enough to take out that horse archer unit. My other 2 here were chasing after some enemy archers or something, but they were being led right into the middle of the enemy formation, so gave up on that. And I gave up on my plan overall at this stage. We have not really done much damage to the enemy, nor did we cause them to attack our hill. But after I came about halfway down the hill, some of the enemy archers at the front started to be in range of me, so a fight begins, although it's not a full committal from the enemy. They're not sending everything up the hill like I want. Still, our slingers, who outrange the archers, can just gradually kill them off, and I'm still trying to be annoying, this time with my Jav Cav on the other flank, and still specifically trying to hit their general who was over here. If we can take out that general before the fight starts, the enemy's balance bar advantage won't mean that much, because most of their troops just won't fight when it comes down to it due to morale. Here we are a bit later where I'm still hammering the enemy general. The enemy have also sent a few units up the hill to fight my phalanx, just the odd 1 or 2, which is perfect. The only issue is they are quite good units. They've got all these heavy berserkers, who are the sort of unit that might actually do some damage against the phalanx even from the front. But at least mainly it is from the front, and we are holding the enemy in place while we try and achieve something else, and at the very least most of the enemy army is not participating in this fight, making it easier for us to gradually kill these guys. It's not going to be the phalanx doing the killing as before, but our slingers are gradually killing stuff. You can't really tell, again, because it's a night battle, but we've got good line of sight on a few of the units that are further back, and we're starting to rout them away. Meanwhile, the enemy general is chasing after my Jav Cav, which is great, and he's getting killed by the Jav Cav, which is even more great. So we sort of lead him off to the side of the battle, and then he gets taken out, and we do rout him at about this point. We've also got my general now joining the fray. We do a wedge heavy cav charge into the end of the enemy's line, and this does rout a couple of units over here and begins to move things into our favour. Now we have the balance bar advantage, and with so much of the enemy not in the fight, our advantage is actually much bigger than it looks. All we need to do is hit all these units that are along the front line one by one, rout them and then slaughter them. We did have a lot of cases where they were routing but not shattering, but now my horse archers can come back into the fight. They will attack the routing units to finish them off, so we don't have to worry about them. Meanwhile, all of the stuff that attacked us at first along the front line has pretty much been taken out, but then all the things that were hanging around at the back gradually move up to the front and another phase to the fight begins. Here's a fun example of two units that both appear to be sword phalanx units, or whatever that is. They're both trying to hit each other and presumably count as having longer range than it looks like they do. This interesting aerobic exercise is inflicting damage to both sides, but not for very long, since the enemy are mostly phalanxes actually at this point. They're slower phalanxes who come into the fight last. All we need to do is grab that formation breached thing from behind, and that'll finish them off. They tend to move forwards, as you can see there. They're trying to avoid being attacked in the rear, but they just move into the unit in front of them, so it doesn't really help. Anyway, one by one, we will take them out at this stage, and all the other enemy units that are just sort of walking around the battlefield can be taken out with more brute force measures. We just run into them with the scout cav and stuff. With the enemy general gone and most of the army dead, we don't have to worry about those fights being bad for us because they just end right away. And that's the end of the battle, with a heroic victory. And actually, compared to the balance bar we had at the start of this fight, the result is real good. We barely lost anything, and the enemy got completely destroyed. They've got like 1.5 units left, and we can just go and kill them right now, in fact, to finish that army off entirely. With this invasion gone, that's going to leave us in a pretty stable situation actually, because with this army, they've got enough strength to go on, so we can now focus again on attacking the Swabos to the south, which also functions as defending against a potential invasion from them, while our army up in Rue Jean just needs to somehow clear out, or failing that, hold Rue Jean. So that's our goal. I guess we'll focus on trying to do both of those things in the next part, so I'll see you there for that.